How high can they be? We'll talk about that with Phil Steele right now on the hotline. We go straight to the hotline. Phil Steele, nationally known as one of the best football analysts in the entire country. Obviously, Phil Steele's college football preview, voter on 20 college football awards, including the Heisman and the WFAA All-American Committee, former ESPN insider. He's got it all. Phil, good morning. How you been, bud? Hello, Phil. How are you? Phil, you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Hey, my man. How you been?
Hey, real good. How about yourself?
Doing wonderful. So I was doing my best to kind of illustrate the why I think people are high on A&M, or those that are. There are many that are not. Why are you high on Texas A&M this year?
Well, numerous reasons. First of all, when I was going over the team with Coach Fisher last year, it seemed like a lot of the positions, especially the offensive line, he would say, boy, are we going to be really good next year. They were an inexperienced team last year. In fact, they rated number 124 on my experience chart. And then they suffered some key injuries, like when Anaya Smith went out in week 3, I think, or week 4, that really hurt them as far as the receiving corps goes. Of course, they went through 3 different starting quarterbacks last year and numerous injuries throughout the year. Now, this year, much more experience. 10 starters back on offense, 10 on defense. They, of course, are loaded with talent. Jimbo's been doing a great job as far as the recruiting aspect goes. And then I'll be putting out a blog in a couple of days which shows how teams do when they make that sort of jump on the experience chart. And usually it's pretty good. Even in a bad year last year, when Texas A&M went just 5-7, an unthought of 5-7, they beat LSU, and they were at the 2-yard line of Alabama on the road with a chance to win the football game in a 4-point loss. So you add all that together, the talent they have. I thought last year I might even pick them to win the West. I backed off a little bit because of last year's 5-7, but I still think that's a distinct possibility, and I like the Aggies' chances on October the 7th.
Phil, I put a lot of the, I don't want to use the word blame, but a lot of the issues last year on a young offensive line that just did not come together. If that offensive line comes together, I feel that offense could be potent. And I believe you had conversations with Jimbo about what the potential of that offensive line.
Yeah, and, as mentioned last year when I talked to him, he felt they could be the best offensive line or one of the best offensive lines in college football. But he didn't say in 2022. He said next year. Well, it's next year, and they do have my number 10 rated offensive line overall. You look at a center like Bryce Foster, right guard Layden Robinson, and last year, remember, there were times where they had 5 true or redshirt freshmen start at least one game last year. So they were very young, very inexperienced, but very talented. And they even add in a couple of players this year to go along with the talent they have. I mean, a guy like Chase Basanis is my number 7 rated offensive lineman coming out of high school. They added in another great class there. So this is a very talented offensive line that I think is going to make a major jump this year.
Phil, let's talk a little bit about Connor Wegman and your expectations for him. Last year, we got a dress rehearsal. He looked really good in his opportunities out there. Obviously, was the architect behind the LSU victory, at least from a quarterback perspective. What do you expect from him this year?
Well, it's the first time where he's been actually lifting weights the entire off season. He didn't play baseball this year. I think that's going to help him when it comes into the mix. He's a guy I feel is a strong leader. He's an accurate passer. He's got really good feet and hands as well, and I think he senses the pocket very well. And so last year, sort of thrown into the fire as a freshman. And as we've seen many times, especially with the quarterback position, you learn so much that first year. You come back a much more confident quarterback the second year. And I like the fact that he's got a guy like Max Johnson pushing him as well.
And what about Bobby Petrino? Do you think he and Jimbo can coexist and make this offense do something more than 22.5 points a game?
Easily. In fact, I don't think Coach Fisher would have brought in Coach Petrino if he didn't think he could coexist with them. And my computer does a pretty good job predicting the points per game on the season. And this year it's calling for over a touchdown increase up into the 30s with the offense. So I think with the better offensive line, with more stability at quarterback, getting Anaya Smith back at wide receiver, all those factors added in with Bobby Petrino, this is going to be a much more explosive offense.
Phil, one of the teams that A&M is going to play that struggled last year as well, and A&M was able to beat them, is the University of Miami. What do you expect from the Canes this year?
Miami's going to be a much improved team. I can tell you when I was going to the squad with Coach Cristobal, he had a he was very confident coming into the call. They got 19 starters coming back. Last year, Tyler Van Dyke was at quarterback. Didn't really fit the offensive system that they had. It's a better fit for the system this year. They bring in Shannon Dawson as the offensive coordinator, coming over from Houston. And I think they melded pretty good together in the spring. They have an improved offensive line. The defense looks stronger across the board. It's going to be a dangerous test for Texas A&M, but I still have the Aggies. And the Aggies are favored by about a touchdown in Vegas right now, and I agree with that. So I think Miami's going to give them a tough test, but I like A&M to win that one.
And how close do you feel it is between LSU and Bama this year? And I think you have A&M as a potential team in that mix. So how close are the tiers?
I think those three are all very close. In fact, I've got Bama at the top of my power poll at number 4. I've got LSU number 11 and A&M number 13. So they're all right in the same area. And I think the race for the West does come down between those three teams. Now, LSU has to play Alabama on the road. They also have to play Ole Miss on the road, but they get the big game against A&M at home. A&M does have a couple of tough road tests. They have to play Tennessee and LSU both on the road, but they get Alabama at home. So I think it's going to be a pretty interesting year. When you look at LSU, like A&M, they took a big jump on my experience chart. They went from number 109 last year when they had just very few returning starters under Brian Kelly to this year where they have 15. They're up to number 49 on my experience chart. So I do think they're a stronger team, although I felt they were a little bit of a fortunate team last year. Won a couple of big comebacks early in the year, played better down the stretch. With Alabama, they're a less experienced team this year, but as you know, Nick Saban's got the talent, and this is the type of year where he's always so dangerous. They are a team that is under the radar after being the preseason number 1 team last year. They only have 5 starters back on offense, 5 on defense, and that's usually when Alabama does their best work. But I think their toughest game of the year for Alabama is that game in College Station on October the 7th.
Yeah, so where is LSU vulnerable this year, in your opinion?
Well, they're good at the quarterbacks, but I think across the board they're very strong. Probably the weakest area for them is going to be special teams. And let's face it, they have a lot of problems with special teams last year. They finished number 117. The bulk of the unit returns, but that's my biggest question mark is going to be special teams with LSU because it's a hidden aspect of the game not a lot of folks look at, but it can be a huge part of it.
So question marks at quarterback at Georgia, question marks at quarterback at Alabama, but yet those are still two of the cream of the crop. Why?
Well, let's take a look at Carson Beck at Georgia. He's a guy that came in there in 21, spent the season there learning the offense, came in at 22, played was there the entire year, hit 74% of his passes with the 4.0 ratio. He's 6'4", 218. He's one of the top quarterbacks out of high school. All he needs is experience. And the bottom line with Georgia, look at their schedule. They're going to be a double-digit favorite in the first 10 games they play. So a young quarterback like a Carson Beck, by the time he gets to the biggest game of the year for them in the regular season at Tennessee, will have 10 games under his belt. He's got a hell of a supporting cast as well. When you look at Georgia, almost every one of their units ranks in my top 6. Top 6 running backs, top 4 receivers, best offensive line, right across the board, including the defense. So he's got a great supporting cast, and after a couple of games, he'll have that experience that you're lacking. Now, Alabama, probably a little bit bigger on the quarterback question marks because coming out of the spring, it was Jalen Milroe or Ty Simpson. Then they bring in Tyler Buckner from Notre Dame. You'll wonder who's going to actually win the starting job there. So it's not as set as Georgia. Probably a bigger question mark at quarterback with Alabama than it is with Georgia.
Talking to Phil Steele here on TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Tennessee, another team that A&M has on their schedule. The Aggies have to go to Knoxville. Hendon Hooker was so phenomenal last year. Joe Milton looked nice when he was in there. How different will they look this year?
I don't think they're going to look a lot different. My big question mark with Joe Milton has nothing to do with size, arm strength, maneuverability, knowledge of the offense, anything. He's got it all. In fact, NFL scouts might list him as the most athletic quarterback in the draft coming up for next year. And he had a fine season last year in his final 2 starts. I mean, they blew out Vanderbilt and then, of course, beat Clemson in the bowl game. My biggest question mark is, can he do what Hendon Hooker did last year? Hendon Hooker threw 27 touchdowns. I think Joe Milton can match that. But can he match the 2 interceptions? While Joe Milton did not throw any interceptions last year. That was a little bit of a bugaboo coming into it, was the interception total. So can he be as highly accurate as Milton was last year is the big question. He has all the physical capabilities. He's got the great supporting cast. It wouldn't surprise me if he's one of the top quarterbacks in the SEC this year.
Phil, what about Oklahoma? Are they going to have a bounce-back year this year?
Absolutely. Going over the team with Coach Venables, and he definitely was annoyed with the way the defense played last year. They gave up over 400 yards per game. They gave up 30 points per game last year. Brought in a lot of transfers on the defensive side of the ball. He runs a rather complex defense. It's his second year in that defense. I think their defense will be much improved. They lost a couple of games big early on when Dylan Gabriel was out. Gabriel's back this year. The offensive line is vastly improved over last year experience-wise. And I think Venables is in year two. Now, amazingly, in Vegas right now, Oklahoma is favored in 11 of their 12 games. So I think Vegas is confident Oklahoma have a rebound. So am I. I have my number 2 most improved team in the country. I have my number 1 most improved team in the country is Texas A&M.
I like the way you think there. Let's try to do one more. Notre Dame, a team that I could see having a really big year, especially because of the quarterback situation.
And it's a massive upgrade at quarterback. I mean, last year they started out with Tyler Buckner, who I like. I'm a big Buckner fan. And then he got injured, so they had to go with their backup quarterback, Drew Pine. And now they bring in a Sam Hartman. So you go from a backup quarterback to one of the best quarterbacks in college football. That's huge. You look at the running back core with Esame, Price, Ford. They're so deep they move Chris Tyree to the slot receiver. They're loaded at tight end. They've got one of the best offensive lines in the country. The defense is solid across the board. And then look at their schedule this year. They get Ohio State at home. They get USC at home. They gave Ohio State quite a game in Columbus last year in Marcus Freeman's first real year as head coach. Now they get them at home, and Ohio State's got a young quarterback going on the road. Meanwhile, Notre Dame's got Sam Hartman. I could see the upset there. I could see the win over USC. The only game I have Notre Dame an underdog in all year is at Clemson. Probably one of my favorite things of the best bets of the season right now is over 8.5 wins for Notre Dame. I think this is a team very capable of double-digit wins and being a national title contender.
Phil, where can everybody get the Phil Steele College Football Preview?
I appreciate that, David. The magazine's available at all the Barnes & Nobles. I think there's 40-plus Barnes & Nobles in Texas, including one right there in College Station. Barnes & Noble, Books A Million are the exclusive dealers this year. Don't waste your gas looking at other places. Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. Or you could go online to philsteele.com. And when you go to philsteele.com, you do have to add in a shipping charge. However, we give you the digital magazine absolutely free, and the digital magazine gets updated all the way through September. So it's your choice, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, or philsteele.com.
Hey, Phil, we love it. Let's talk during the season, all right?
Hey, sounds good. A lot of fun talking football with you today.
Thank you, Phil. Have a great one, sir.